Hi, I'm Iwan and welcome to the latest 4BR Review podcast, where I'm joined by my colleague Chris Thomas to chat about what has, what is, and what will be going on in the brass band world. For this latest episode, we are previewing the National Championship final at the Royal Albert Hall, where 19 top section UK bands will battle to become 2025 Champion Band of Great Britain. It's an event that is full of intrigue and expectation, with a great deal of interest in how the bands will tackle Edward Gregson's Symphony in Two Movements, a major work in more ways than one. We'll be giving our views about the piece and how bands will need to tackle it if they are to be in with a chance of lifting the famous national trophy. In addition, we'll also be looking at the wider context and whether or not, after 80 years since it first took place at the Royal Albert Hall, is it time to change or even move the event to a new home? We will be looking to see what you think. Your views and opinions are key to that, so please be part of the live discussion by posting your comments in the YouTube comment box on the screen. All that, and if we have time, we'll be looking at some of the latest releases, and there have been a few, with the latest from the International Staff Band of the Salvation Army, Black Dyke, Imogen Whitehead, Edward Gregson, Wilfred Heaton, David Charles, Matilda Lloyd, Brett Baker, Kyle Lawson, Corey and Tredegar to fit in, as well as anything else if we have the time. Well, great to be back, Chris, and the annual trip to London for the national finals.
Absolutely, an action-packed weekend ahead, Ewan.
Yeah. First of all, then, given what we are going to discuss over the next hour, the national finals have been at the Albert Hall since about 1945. They haven't been there every year, but apart from the bar prices, the backstage alterations and the acoustic, nothing much has changed since. So is it about time that it did?
Yeah, I think there were a few more things that have changed than that, I would say, Ewan. I mean, ticket prices, for one thing, have changed. The cost of getting there and the cost of accommodation has changed for both the bands and the audience. The audiences have changed, as we know full well. And I think attitudes to test pieces have changed as well. So in reality, there's a lot that's changed. But we have to react to those changes, don't we?
Yeah, looking at the images that we just put up on the screen for people to have a look at, there's a great amount of work that went on. Well, it's been going on for the last 20 odd years, but I think in the last, just before COVID, etc., there was a huge construction job that went on at the Royal Albert Hall. Changed everything backstage. It used to be like a little rat run, they used to call it, didn't they, before trying to get onto the stage. The vomitories, as they're called, the little pathways that take you onto the stage. But they've all changed, so that has been much more modernised. The acoustic was changed, I think, most probably just after the war in the 1960s, when those acoustic mushrooms were actually put up. Those are there on there. Right. They're not always beautifully lit up like that. That's one of Ian Clowes's great pictures from a couple of years ago there. And as we said to you as well, some other things haven't changed whatsoever. One thing, however, that hasn't changed, which is a good thing, there is that history and that sense of pride that everybody has still. Even playing at the Albert Hall, if it's not full, packed to the rafters, you know, there's no other place quite like it anywhere in the world. No,
there isn't. And I think we can look back on our playing days, Ewan. I mean, I think I first played at the Albert Hall in 1889.
1889, I thought he was going to say
1889. Feels like 1889, actually. But yeah, 1989. Odin was the test piece. There you go.
Right.
And there is a pride, and you feel the sense of history, and I think you still feel that, and I think you still feel the pride. I mean, I've not actually played there now for about 20 years, but I think if I walked on the stage on Saturday, I'd still feel that sense of heritage, that sense of history. So you're right, that hasn't changed. What has changed is the money. We can't deny that, and the financial elements of it. But attitudes, as I say, to the music have changed, and that's one of the reasons why I think we've got such a terrific test piece this year in Edward Gregson's Symphony in Two Movements. But more of that anon.
It is. Again, 1989 was yours. Do you know what mine was? 1974.
Well, you were a lot older than
young,
me, Ewan.
I have to say. I played with Tredegar Junior Band, as they were then, in the Butlins Championships in 1974, the year that Corey won it. Unfortunately, they won't be able to win it this year.
They won't.
But and we had a corner player, Howard Jones, and he played with us at Tredegar and won in the Butlins Championships. He was a national junior champion in the morning, And then later on, he won the national championships at Corey in the afternoon. So he was a double champion in one day. He was. Not many people have actually done that. And you're right. I think other things that have changed more than anything, it's the external things that have changed a great deal. I know London has always been an expensive place to go to. It doesn't matter if you go back to the 70s, the 60s, whatever. It's always been an expensive place to go to. But I think in the last few years, hotel prices, especially post-COVID, have absolutely exploded. But the demand is there. You know, people. It's a world city now, so people come from everywhere to go and see the great, museums and everything. So the demand is there, but it does mean that the reward that you get for winning the championship there doesn't in any way, shape or form cover any of the costs that are incurred in actually getting there. And it may be possibly that it's coming to a point where the bands are looking at it and just saying the balance of the musical experience that you get, and as you say, the pride that's involved balanced against the financial hit that it comes with, I think possibly the balance needs to be either readdressed or looked at again in some other way, whether or not that is again to another place in London or whether or not it's got to be taken away.
It's a long time since the prize money has had any meaningful impact on a band's ability to attend you, and isn't it? I mean, looking back over many years, I mean, we've seen the prize money this year increase at the British Open to 5,500, which is a step in the right direction. But I think the prize money is just one of the many financial pressures that weigh on capital in keeping the events at the Royal Albert Hall, and I think we have to have a degree of sympathy with capital here, because I think they're trying to do the best they can to keep the heritage of the contest there, to keep it at the Royal Albert Hall as long as it can possibly stay there. But ultimately, the prize money is just one of many pressures that weigh down on them.
I know that the higher costs are astronomical, and I think they've got to be paid up front. I think a lot of people don't quite realise that you don't get invoiced, to pay 60 days after. The Albert Hall, of course, lost a shed load of money during COVID. I mean, tens of millions of pounds in debt. And it's been clawing back that money. If we have a look at the schedule that they've got of events, there is something which is going on there literally every day from now until this time next year. When Grimethorpe Colliery Band are going there to play in the 30th anniversary of Brast Off. So they are planning literally years ahead to make sure that that hall is filled. So at one time, a covetous eye may be looking at a Saturday in October and thinking to themselves, how can we make a bit more money on that Saturday? And it doesn't have to be from brass bands, and we have to look at that.
Well, I think even in 1989, Ewan, when I played there, I think you and I will have memories going back then of sitting on the stage and having people literally breathing down your neck behind you. I mean, I can remember the first time I sat on the Albert Hall stage. I mean, it was intimidating. You'd have people, you could actually feel them looking at your part over your shoulder. And those were the days when the choir stalls were full and they had people literally sitting around the band. And that was 35, 36 years ago, not that long ago, really, but how things have changed in that intervening period.
It's strange. The only time I've had somebody breathing down my neck at the Albert Hall is when the flugel player with Tredegar got lost. And I was just I was due to come in. I won't tell him his name, but Rob Nesbitt, his name was. We were playing one of the bourgeois pieces we were. And I was just due to come halfway through the middle movement. Tom Weiss was conducting us, play the solo bit on soprano. My time to shine. It was anything up to top G. It was my time to shine. And all I could hear in my ear was, where are we? Gwaith, where are we? Where are we? Where are we? I was thinking, great, that's all I need at the Royal Albert Hall. So that's what but the one thing you are right about, it's a wonderful place to play, but it reminds me a little bit of somebody once said about Wembley Stadium with the football. In 1966, when England won the World Cup, it must have been the most fantastic place on earth. But I went there once to watch the rugby, and you walked out and it was next to a cement works and the place was falling down. I didn't quite have that magic, and it's a little bit with the Albert Hall. It's a bit of faded glory about it. I think it's a bit, it's a bit like one of those great stately galleons that you see, it looks fantastic from afar, but when you get a little bit closer and have a look at what's actually inside, it's, it's a little bit dowdy and in need of a revamp. And when you place it up against other great venues, and there are many great venues now throughout the UK, it's still got that pomp, it's still got that glory, it's still got that splendour about it. But as a place to actually perform on stage, well, it's not possibly the greatest one we've ever done.
I think you and I have only played in a pretty full Royal Albert Hall, Ewan, and I think now if you ask people that were playing there, younger players that are playing in the bands, for instance, on Saturday, that have only played there in very recent years, they might well have a very different opinion on it without being able to look back on those, well, great years really that we played there when the hall was still full every year.
It is. I remember there used to be very strange men with long coats who used to be outside. Nowadays they get social services involved if you ever see those blokes outside. But they used to be the ticket touts, didn't they?
That's
They used
right.
to come in,
That's
they used
right.
to open the court
Yeah.
and they used to say, do you fancy a ticket for the gods? Because that was the only place you could actually get into
The
there.
days when tickets were in such demand, Ewan. Yeah.
It was. They're out there. I wonder where all those ticket touts have gone. Yeah, I know where they've gone. They got online. That's where they've gone. Most of them selling tickets to poor people for pop concerts. That's what they have, not for brass band concerts.
They're still there. They're just not there for brass band events, sadly, Ewan. So.
It is. But there we go. Somebody's got in contact with us straight away. DJ Wildcat, and he says, London is the second best city in the planet. The best city on the planet is so good they named it twice. Is that Cardiff, is it? I don't know.
Or was it Swansea?
Or Swansea, Abertawe. All the Welsh places are named twice, once in English and once in Welsh. That's how you can do that. I got a funny feeling he may be talking about New York and with that part
I
of it
think
there.
he might be. I think he might be.
And he's come back as well to say that, the prize money ain't the reason bands enter. However, if a band wins, they can charge a premium for concerts and folks will pay to hear the champions. P.S. Only one rugby, and that's rugby league, he says. I got a funny feeling he's up north, as they say, with that one. There's a point.
He's got a point,
Ewan.
Ewan. He's got a point.
Yeah, prestige. There's something that comes to prestige, and there is a prestige. You just got to ask the Flowers Band after they won that competition. They ended up going to doing concerts in Snape Maltins, of course, etc. So it's really broadens out the opportunities for bands. The problem is that how many people actually know what's actually going on the weekend at the Royal Albert Hall. Whether or not the BBC knows about it, may well do, because you may be saying something because a little bit later on about that.
Yeah, indeed.
But it's about us looking outwards rather than inwards. We got to measure success in a different way.
Yeah.
And that measurement is not really about who wins and how good the performance is. It's about how many people are actually there to listen to us and whether or not the people who are walking about outside by the Albert Memorial actually know what's going on 100 yards away from them in the hall itself. One thing that I would say, however, is the music that has been chosen. And again, the Albert Hall has provided some memorable test pieces over the years. And I think we've got a memorable test piece coming. I know we are great fans of Edward Gregson, but Symphony in Two Movements. A wonderful major work, and it really is major in more ways than one. Around 19 minutes in duration.
Yeah.
So it's a big piece. It's going to be a long day, but it is a wonderful test. And any band that masters it, gets the nod from the judges, is going to be a worthy champion band of Great Britain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we said last time that it's 19 minutes long. I know there'll be some controversy about that, but the reality is I, for one, would rather sit and listen to a 19-minute piece of the quality of this score than I would to 15 minutes of a lesser piece where it's already 3 minutes too long, even at that. So this is a terrific piece of writing, as we said. It's a fine piece, intellectually rigorous, but it's an ensemble piece, Ewan, isn't it? I mean, we've talked recently on other podcasts about formulaic test pieces, and this is absolutely going against the things that we've talked about. And it's so refreshing to have a piece which is so beautifully constructed, so beautifully written, modelled on Beethoven. So it's actually got quite an unconventional structure in some ways, but so craftsmanlike as you would expect from Gregson.
It is. I've got my little score there. I'm just going to show that a bit of a love-in because he's actually signed mine for me.
He could sign mine on Saturday.
Yeah, so he actually signed it for me. But you were right about the structure of the work. It was written in 2013.
Yeah.
It was premiered by the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain and the National Youth Brass Band of Wales.
Yeah.
It was to be used. So the myth goes of at the British Open Championships, and I think that's quite correct. However, it was not used there for a variety of reasons. Disappointing, I think, that it wasn't, and really it's curious that it's taken so long for it to come back onto the major contest stage. Black Dyke played it at the European Championships
They
once,
did.
and it really opened people's eyes, but it somehow, possibly to do with the length of it, it didn't. But now it's got its rightful place, and it's going to take some playing, because the challenge, as you said, the challenges here are not only just for the players but for the conductors. There are subtleties
Absolutely.
in tempo choices, there are subtleties in dynamics, there are subtleties in the way in which the textures of the music. It's not wham bam thank you ma'am stuff right from the beginning. So a really mature band with a mature musical outlook from their
And
end
that's,
is possibly the band that's going to do well.
That's not to say there aren't demanding solo parts, Ewan, because there are, and I talk about it as an ensemble piece, and I do believe it is an ensemble piece. But you're absolutely right. It's the subtleties of the scoring, just very subtle shifts in tempo that are littered all the way through the score, where he uses phrases like relaxed, always moving. And then there are words thrown in like majestically, mercurial, menacingly, serenely, ecstatically, triumphantly. There are so many clues in the score, and Eddie has liberally scattered those throughout, giving the bands and the conductors a real idea as to what he believes or how the piece should be
Interestingly,
played.
he says it's his most abstract work, but he uses more adjectives than I use, and I use plenty of them. But
it's grasping the construction of this piece that's going to be one of the keys to its performance, isn't it? And it's actually finding the relationships between those subtle shifts of tempo, because those are the kinds of things that will really help a performance to hang together. So, as you said, there's a lot for conductors to think about as well as the players in that respect.
It's interesting. Malcolm Wood has come back to us. Well done, Malcolm. Great to have you back with us. He said, when was the last time the hall was full, though, or had a very healthy attendance? And what would you consider a good audience nowadays? Well, I have to, again, a good point made. It's a long time since the hall was full.
Yeah,
I have to go back to my youth, I would have thought, before that, when it was really full, absolutely packed to the rafters. The audience has been diminishing over many years with respect to that. And it is a difficult thing, as we said, and this is where sympathy for the organisers were doing that, because the outside forces also put pressure on what's actually happening inside the hall on the contest day. So if you go back, I think it was about 20 years ago now, where Besson did a documentary with Stephen Mead.
Yes,
and it was a very young Ewan Fox on it, I have to say. My hair was much more like a raven's wing. It was a little bit darker in colour. And that was when Judges of the Secret Court was used.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't full, but that was about the biggest, healthiest audience in that respect in terms of numbers that we've had for a number of years. But
2006, Ewan, would I be right?
Yeah, something like that. I think Graham Thorpe won it on the day. Now, the audience, the bands will certainly enjoy playing this piece. The conductors will certainly enjoy working on the piece. And the audience, I am sure, will certainly enjoy listening to it. But then comes the caveat. There are going to be 19 performances of it. It's going to be a very long day. And the structure of the day is that, we still back to, traditional heritage, whatever it's called. We don't know what the draw is going to be. The bands don't know what the draw is going to be. A modernisation needs to occur to make sure that we appeal to the listener, not only to the bands and to the conductors and the performers themselves, but to the listener. And if the general listener wants to find out exactly when they know in advance, rather than turning up at the hall at 9 o'clock in the morning, where the bands are going to be performed, it's possibly about time that came around. So going back to Malcolm's point, if it attracts an audience, all well and good. But if it attracts a new audience because they find it very relevant to what we're actually doing, that possibly will be the mark of success.
Yeah, this is such a difficult one, Ewan. I don't necessarily believe that the number of bands playing in the contest is the problem. We've got 19 bands this year playing a 19-minute piece. That's a long day, but it's a long day on an extremely high-quality piece of music. So I don't necessarily believe that is the problem. I think the problems are more along the lines of the points that we've already discussed. Does it seriously make any difference whether we have 16 bands or 19 bands. I think what does make a difference, I think your point about the draw is an important one. But even that comes with caveats, because if you look at the draw and there's a pre-draw, for instance, does that mean that you get greater migration in and out of the hall through the day than we already get? I mean, all of these things come with add-on complexities, don't they?
They do indeed. The complexity about the piece itself is going to be judged by three very experienced gentlemen, Mr. Cobb, Mr. Whiffin and Mr. Bowsfield. Now, these, as I say, are three experienced musicians. Great to see Ian Bowsfield here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Interesting, as we said, for the simple reason that there's been a cry out from many people in many quarters to have new ears, new voices, new people with new opinions about what we do in the banding world. Now, Ian Bowsfield has got a rich brass band heritage, but he's got a heritage of playing at the very, very highest level anywhere in the world. So to have somebody of that caliber, that pedigree to come and, you know, cast his eye and his ear and his opinion over our performances and tell us if it's good, if it's bad, or it's mediocre. I wouldn't like to be a person who turned around and says, sorry, Ian, I disagree. I don't think you know what you were talking about. And he is backed by two, again, Stephen Cobb, highly experienced, high-class musician, and the same with Rob Whiffin as well. In their field, they've really excelled. The only caveat for me, I wish we could have a female adjudicator at some time. And it would be wonderful if we had somebody, say, for instance, Alison Balsam, who was at the proms this year.
Fine example.
Took a final bow, and it would have been brilliant to have her back to take a first bow at the brass band event.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, Alison Balsam would have been a wonderful choice to have in there. And I totally agree with what you say about Ian Bowsfield. I mean, I think with Ian Bowsfield, I mean, as you say, a musician of impeccable credentials, and the reality is, I think with his orchestral experience, I mean, I remember Ian as principal trombone at Yorkshire Imps when he was 15, I think, if I remember rightly. But a man of his orchestral experience with the LSO, Vienna Phil, etc., he will bring a much more extended pair of ears to the box, and I think we need that balance between people like Stephen Cobb and Rob Whiffin, who are vastly experienced in their fields and also vastly experienced adjudicating at the Albert Hall. I mean, they've been in the box on numerous other occasions. But so I broadly welcome Ian Bowsfield. I think it's a good choice, but I totally agree that somebody like Alison Balsam in the box would have been a great move.
Yeah, I have to say, Capital are listening, I understand, because, as you said, they've got a PR company, a London-based PR company involved now. So they are looking at it. And the one thing you get with PR companies, they're not particularly interested in the nitty-gritty or the minutiae of brass band contesting. They're looking at the bigger picture. You know, that's the reason why you pay them big money to sell toilet rolls with puppy dogs. You know,
there's a lot more. There's a lot more social media stuff going out from Capital this year, which
it is, and I think that's really been a difference.
There's been a countdown, hasn't there, going on pretty much with different bits of information every day. So that's been really noticeable this year.
It is. And you did see it, funny enough, at Cheltenham. There was a much more better social media response from it. And it made the bands feel, you know, valued with it, because their opinions were actually being listened to and they were being featured. So that was good. Talking about the not so good, as we said, just to touch on there, as we said, the format. You said 19 bands. It would have been 20, but for 1 year, they decided only to have 3 pre-qualified bands, not the 4 bands. The one band, unfortunately, that missed out was the Corey band, who won't be there this year. But the 19 bands, all of them will be looking to replicate the fantastic achievement by the Flowers band last year, who were the worthiest of champions. You have to say that was no surprise result after they played at the British Open Championships and then came back on and absolutely took that prize in the finest possible fashion under Paul Holland. There's also then things like the pre-results concert on this occasion. They've had some little bits and pieces which they've tinkered with. A couple of years ago, they had a very strange, it was singing of the national anthem, if you remember that one. Do you remember they had those 2 singers who came on and did it?
I do remember.
That was it was a bit spooky.
I wish I didn't, actually, but no, I do remember.
No, they do that one.
Yeah.
And you've got the concert that comes out. It's a little bit, you know, it's between a rock and a hard place. You know, the contest day is over. Everybody wants to know the results, but there needs to be a gap to be filled. Now, they've done it in the past. They've had, I think they have a Nozzle Brass there the one year.
They did one year,
They've had people like David Child, all that part. So somebody's got to fill that part of it. And it's always a time where people's, You know, they're wandering around. They want to have a drink. They want to talk to
Yeah.
their friends, and
Yeah.
it is a difficult one. Youth Brass 2000 are there this year. Fantastic thing for the band and experience, and great to have them involved. But it could be a long day. We're looking at about 8 o'clock plus when the results may be announced.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when you think back to the days of the gala concert, Ewan, I mean, that's going back a few years now, isn't
Yeah.
it? But, you know, the hall would be full for the gala concert. But I think these days the value of that concert has been diminished, really. And unfortunately, I think the reality is that after a day particularly as long as this Saturday is going to be, people are restless at the end of the contest. They want to go out, they want to stretch their legs, they want to have a drink. They might come back in for the results themselves, but nonetheless, it's not easy to keep people in the hall for that little mini concert. We've got Youth Brass 2000, I think, this year, haven't we?
Yeah,
they'll do a great job. They're terrific. But I just hope that people will stay in and listen and really just witness what a fine youth band they are. It's not an easy one, Ewan, and there's possibly an argument for going straight into the results, particularly
There is,
this
and
year.
there's a bit of pomp and glory. I think they usually have the fanfare trumpet team
Yeah,
and all that sort of
absolutely,
stuff.
and you could still have that.
And
you know.
it does look good, but it does come at the end of a long day. The other
Yeah.
part of it at the end of the long day, as we have touched on a little bit, is the prize money. And the last time, now we may be shocked, we never know. There may be somebody may have put their hand in their pocket and there'll be an extra prize money this weekend, but nothing has been announced as yet. The last time the prize money was actually increased was way back in 1980 when the £2,000 first prize came in.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
£2,000 in 1980 would be worth over £10,300 today. So it's 4.6 times higher. All right, inflation has gone up, whatever. You can blame all the politicians for that. But £2,000 doesn't go a long way. It would be the equivalent of around about £10,000 today. But as we said, if you had the same audiences that you had in 1980, and we had those on this weekend, then the organisers may be able to afford to pay £10,000 out to the winning band. So there's economics involved in regards to it. But it would be nice in some way, possibly, that a little extra cash goes with that great big fantastic pot of silver that you could take away as well, which I think you still got to insure also. So that actually, the £2,000.
Hope it doesn't cost £2,000.
Yeah, so it goes a little way there. So before we move on from that, we're looking at the bands that are actually there. You are going to be there. Steve is going to be there. We've got Josie who's going to join us. She was with us on last year to do the comments. I'll be there. Matthew Rule will be coordinating things. And we got the great images that are coming from the rest. The bands to look out for. And one of them is certainly the Brighouse and Rastrick band, of course.
Absolutely.
Fantastic winners of the British Open Championships. There's David King and his gang there. I wonder what the odds are for them to do a double. It would be some fantastic achievement. But looking at the list of bands, people say, they pick and, they want to pick their favourites, etc. There are some defined levels. The bands who, really know that they can win. The bands that think they can win. And then there's the band thinking, we can possibly get a good result. So looking at the lineup from there, the usual suspects stand out a little bit at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that, as you say, Brighouse, a wonderful performance at the British Open just a few weeks ago. So they'll be riding high. That rich seam of confidence, I'm sure, will still be flowing through the band. One interesting comparison here is Black Dyke, who, of course, didn't have a good result at the British Open. But Nick Childs knows the piece well. He conducted it. In fact, I think he conducted it with the National Youth Brass Band of Wales when it was written back in 2013? It was premiered, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then conducted it, I think, with Black Dyke at the Europeans in Oslo. We were there, Ewan, weren't we? I think that was 2015, if I remember rightly. So Nick knows the piece well, and I've got a sneaky feeling that we might hear a different Black Dyke in the Royal Albert Hall to the band that we heard at the British Open just a few weeks
he's got a
ago.
long association with Edward Gregson's music. He's got a real intuitive feel for it. And
He has.
He did a fine performance, as you said, on this piece at the European Championships. Different band, of course, nowadays. But they could be a band to look out for, I have to say there. And they may well pick up that first prize. And then, as you say, you've got the Brighouse and Rastrick. And then Foden's, of course, and the defending champions, Flowers. They sure to put strong performances in.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, I think both Paul Holland and Russell Gray will have a very, very strong command of the structure that we were talking about and the subtleties of the piece, which are so important. And then we've also got Tredegar. I've got a feeling this piece is going to suit Tredegar, and you can't comment on that, of course.
Can't possibly comment, as Mr. Urquhart used to say in Game of Cards. I couldn't possibly comment.
But I just have a feeling this piece very much suits the sound of the band. But then we've got bands like Cooperation. I think
really on the rise.
Absolutely. Oldbourne, who turned in a terrific performance at the British Open again a few weeks ago. So some strong contenders. But there's always one or two surprises at the Albert Hall as well. There are always one or two bands that creep in there that take the audience possibly slightly by surprise, aren't there?
It is. Again, one of the things that they do say at the Albert Hall, I remember John Hudson, when he came and conducted Tredegar many years ago, you've got to blow.
Yeah,
you've got to make a big sound, because you can play beautifully and you know that you're playing well on stage, but the sound literally goes to that. It's a bit like hitting 4 runs in a
space to fill, isn't it?
In a village cricket, it just rolls up to the boundary and then just plops over the sound. It doesn't. You need to fill the hall with sound, detail. And you've got to have that dynamic range to make it sound exciting.
Absolutely.
That's going to be something there. But it's some great bands, as I said. You've got bands out looking at there. Leyland, who had a fine result. Gus, who were on the up as well. Then you've got bands like the Welsh band Ebu Valley, who are coming back again, doing the second time. And it's wonderful to see the one debutant, East London Brass, conducted by Jay Morrell. 2 female conductors at the competition this year. What a great thing that is!
I think that's the first time, Ewan, isn't it?
So
is
many
that the
more.
First time we've had 2 female conductors at the national finals. So
maybe I'll have to have a look at the background from that one. There, it's interesting talking about. We got some great comments coming in from people. I think I'm going to look back. There was one that came from our great friend Alec Gallagher in 1980. He says, 2K bought you circa 4,800 pints of ale. He's shown his age when he calls it ale. Today it buys you circa 526 pints.
Is that at London prices, Alec?
Alec, you go to the wrong pubs. I'm going to say, if you came to Tredegar in 1980, you get about 14,000 pints of beer for that bad weather. But there's a point. If you're going to measure anything, you may as well measure it in the pint of beer. I think people still go around the corner to is it either the Gloucester Arms or into the
Queen's Mews?
The Queen's Mews, and they. So I wonder what a cost of a pint is there nowadays from that one. We've also got Graham Brill. And he's made a couple of points, and he says his first national championships go back to 1974. 50 pence for a ticket up in the gods. The hall would never be as full as you have to get permission to use the boxes from the owners. It is.
That was the first year you played, Ewan, wasn't it?
It was. He must have watched me that day and thought, look at that wonderfully precocious young third corner player. What will ever become of him? I tell you what will become of him. He never got much further than a precocious third corner player. That's what became of him, I have to say there.
Well, neither of us won the national championships, Ewan.
Yeah, but good, points that are being made there from that side of it. So let's talk about the solutions then, possibly. We did touch on them a little bit. You could say cutting the numbers is the one that a lot of people have talked about. A little while ago, I did an article which said, what would be the ideal numbers for the competition. You could either have taken it down to the top 10 plus the 8 regional champions, or you can have the top 8 plus the 8 regional champions, which would take it down to roughly about 16. Or you could actually have turn it into a bit like the European Championships. So you have to have fewer bands where they could play a test piece in the morning and an own choice in the afternoon. The problem with that, if it goes down the European route, the own choices will be coming 20 minutes long. So you just get even longer days. So there are some ideas which have been pushed around from a number of people to do that. And one of them is about finding a new home. And it's a point that Graham Brill has just come out with, and I'll just touch on it there. He says, rumour mill has it in future that all sections in London will be at the Barbican. I don't know whether or not it's the Barbican. The BBC used to get the lap of honour of the winning band on the radio. Hopefully we'll get, back of the days where we get the winning performance back on the radio. But there is People coming up with ideas about taking, if it is going to go away from the Royal Albert Hall, people have looked at possibility of it going to the Alexander Palace, and also that lovely looking place there. I like brutalist architecture, I have to say. And the South Bank.
That's brutal. That's brutal.
That brutal colour, I have to say. I got a chair like that in the front room. The South Bank, favoured, we understand, by a sounding board of ideas which has been initiated by Brass Bands England, where about taking the whole national championships to the South Bank. And that may be something that possible that Graham Brill was looking at. It's been pushed out for, it's not a proposal, it's an idea to find out about it. You could have it then on the whole, either on the weekend or on one day at the South Bank. Sounds great, but again, it's about numbers. If you still got that number of bands coming in, it's just going to be, logistically difficult to do. So the numbers maybe have to be reduced. And the other part of it is the thing that we talked about on the wider scope. He's still in London. And guess what? London prices are still going to, the only way they're going is going up. So again, I
think the question there, Ewan, for me, is if you take the National Championship final out of the Royal Albert Hall, does it then need to come out of London, or does it need to be rotated? Can it be rotated with London being one of the venues on a 3-year cycle or possibly a 5-year cycle? But the big question for me is you move the national finals to the Barbican or to the South Bank Centre, you've still got the same problems with costs. Maybe you could reduce the ticket prices a little bit, depending on what the venue hire costs are, but you've still got the same cost of travelling for bands, and you've still got the same cost of travelling for audiences, and I don't think it solves the problem. There is the question of how it feels to be in a half-empty hall. And I think one of the problems at the Royal Albert Hall is that there is something sadly demoralising about sitting in a hall that's only 25 or 35% full. One of the advantages, and of course we were at the British Open, I think that the Royal Albert Hall sits about 6,000 Ewan, if I remember rightly, doesn't it?
About 5,500 though it is.
Yeah, and we were at the British Open a few weeks ago, that seats about 2,000 and it was full, and there's a completely different atmosphere. So there is that question of the balance between a Royal Albert Hall that's only a third full and a smaller hall in a London venue that feels more like the British Open, if you can get the audience there. But we still have that problem of costs, and that's not going to go away. And I think that is a fundamental
and that's I've got a great
issue.
deal of sympathy for Capital with regards to that. You see, because
So do
as
I.
you say,
So do I.
It's great. For instance, Brass in Concert is hopefully will be sold out, and it looks like it's going to be sold out. But that's about 1,460 tickets.
Yeah.
That's about 1,500 at the most if they pack a few extra chairs in from that part of it. The British Open, I think it's 2,100 tickets were available. They sold in the end just on the day, just touching 2,000. So that was an incredible achievement to do that part of it there. But that's where the audience is for brass band in the UK.
Yeah.
But 2,000 people in the Royal Albert Hall isn't even half full.
No,
and,
it isn't.
When you look out in the Albert Hall, there's a sea of red, and it's like the blood leaching away from the brass banding movement. You may as well, it's cutting the veins and it's going out there. So there is a problem there. Hopefully, the things that they are doing, they are trying to be progressive. Hopefully, this competition may see the start of a renaissance. We can only hope. But if not, there are options. There are people looking at options and possibilities. And one of them, as you say, maybe within London, maybe just over the road in the South Bank. But it could be that it goes to Alexander Palace, or maybe going on the road, but not losing that opportunity to come back to the Royal Albert Hall. So it's not an experience which is lost for a generation. It's still there, but on a less regular basis.
Yeah, and let's just finish on a positive note on that, Ewan, because we've got a fabulous day of music to listen to and to look forward to on Saturday. We've got a terrific piece, 19 bands playing an excellent work by Edward Gregson. So let's revel in that and enjoy it, and revel in the fact that we have got a wonderful piece of music for people to listen to and for the bands to play.
I was going to say, just touching on those bands, you say from it is literally A to Z. It's really good for London, that is. So you got Aldbourne, Black Tie, Brighouse and Rastrick, City of Hull, Desford, East London Brass, Ebbw Valley, Flowers, Fodens, Gus, Hepworth, Leyland, NSC, UWT, Riverside, Oldham, Lee, St Dennis. Great to see them back. I think the last time they were here in the 1970s.
Yeah.
The Cooperation Band, Tredegar, Whitburn. Zone 1 Brass. And I'm just going to give one little tip for them because I got a funny feeling that Zone 1 Brass could really enjoy themselves on this piece if they've all been able to get together somewhere to do enough the rehearsals on it. So you never
absolutely.
know.
Well, they've got
Right
a fine conductor in Richard Ward, and they've got a reputation of pulling off good results at the Royal Albert Hall, haven't they? They've not got far to go, Ewan, of course, so no travelling or accommodation involved for them.
It is, but there we are. One final word with Malcolm. He's just come back and he says, remember, costs aside, technological advancement means performances are now recorded, yes, but they're also listened to by brass band people. So they're not being, it's not they're being recorded and everybody around the world is saying, oh, I'm going to buy in and do that part of it. But he says, and he does make the point, we must remember we play to ourselves. That's been the case, but I think most probably for the vast majority through history. That is the bit that's got to change. It is changing in different areas. Entertainment competitions, as you say, at brass and concert, etc. It is changing. But it is being mirrored at national championships across the world. If you go to, I think the Swiss are back in the trend, but if you go to Norway, and I've been to Norway for the last 20 odd years, whereas 20 years ago, the hall was full for every band, it's not now. No, and that may be a little blasé, whatever. So we've got to be very, very careful looking outside and thinking somebody else is doing it right. When really the general impression is that all of us have just got to be looking outside and doing that. Absolutely. So, Chris, you'll be there. Steve will be there. Sophie will be there. Myself, Matthew, and the team. And we will be bringing all our live comments throughout that weekend. So that gives us time just about to race through our reviews. And it's all going to be CDs on this occasion. And we've had some absolute crackers. And I hope that people will take the opportunity to either purchase them, download them, whatever they've got to do, because there's some great CDs here. The first of them that just come through, and I've just had the pleasure of re-listening to it, has been Black Dyke Respighi, conducted by Professor Nicholas Charles. I think it's fair to say this is a bit of a seminal achievement for a brass band. Fantastic arrangements done, of course, by Howard Snell and Howard Lorriman. Playing of the highest class, and everything about the CD itself. I know that you were involved with it in a way, but it's a remarkable achievement. It's absolutely outstanding. Taken 4 years in the making, but the worth has been well worth it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, sonically, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, it is an incredible CD. As you say, the recordings were made over several years. I mean, this really is a labour of love from Nick Childs. I mean, this is a celebration of his 25 years at Black Dyke as musical director. It was his project. It was his ambition, really, to bring this CD to life. You and I know the arrangements by Howard Snell of Pines of Rome and Roman festivals going way back to the 1980s, Ewan, when Howard Snell wrote them initially for Desford, but they were obviously played by Fodens as well. And it's very interesting that Howard Snell says that in those arrangements, the organ, piano, harp parts were always there, but they chose not to include them. I think there was one performance, Howard Snell was saying, at the Lichfield Festival, where they included harp. But this is the first time that we've had those pieces with the organ, piano and harp parts. And then Howard Lorriman was commissioned to produce a new arrangement of Fountains of Rome, which I have to say lives up to Howard Snell's arrangements in every way. It really is terrific. I have to say, Fountains of Rome is possibly my favourite of the three Roman pieces of Respighi, but the recordings are wonderful, the performances are fabulous. I do have a slight vested interest, you and I have to say, because I wrote them. I wrote the booklet notes for it, so I have to declare a degree of self-interest here.
I did, and very informative they were too. The interesting point is that you got the Fountains of Rome. Strangely, is nothing really to do with Rome. It's all just to do with the fountains. The earliest, I think, is the 16th century, and they go all the way up to literally the turn of the 20th century. So it's modern. It's the architecture of modern Rome. It is, but the other two really do hark back to the great days of empire. I can. You're like the Mary Beard you are of brass banding and Roman. Well done for that. But I have to say, it's been absolutely fantastic. And congratulations to Professor Nicholas Child and the band.
It's a great achievement.
As I say, really Rome wasn't built in a day. That one took 4 years, but it's been absolutely well worth it. The second one I have to go on to is interesting. These heritage CDs, volume 8, music from the 2000s by the International Staff Band of the Salvation Army. And the reason why I really enjoyed this, the music is always interesting. I don't know a great deal about some of the pieces. It's that side of music making is not an area of my expertise, I have to say, in any way, shape or form. But there's some interesting works on here. But the thing that really makes it, there's a final track on here, is not musical at all. It's a conversation between Andrew Blythe and Dr. Stephen Cobb, talking about many of the works that are included, especially ones by Kenneth Downey, Kevin Norbury, etc. And the way in which they explain it is so enlightening, is that then you go back and listen and literally you think, right, I can see what they're talking about there. And it's so interesting. It would be a great idea if more bands took 5 minutes out of saying, rather than cram something else onto a CD, just take 5 minutes out of it. Stephen Cobb is such an informed musician. Yeah, and as you say, the bands will find that out on the weekend at the Royal Albert Hall. But when it came to this CD, I have to say it really made it much more interesting, much more engaging, and much more understandable from a secular point of view rather than a religious point of view. Yeah, so it's a really fine CD. It's congratulations to everybody involved in that, I have to say.
And the ISB can be heard on Friday nights, I think, Ewan, in London.
They are.
It's
Gregson at 80, I think
Gregson's music, exactly.
And Ian Bousfield, I think, is going to be the guest soloist.
The trombone concerto.
Yep, Stephen Cobb will be conducting. Mr. Bousfield will be doing it. So both of those pair are going to have a busy weekend, aren't they?
Absolutely.
So there we are.
Absolutely.
The third of them, of the ones that we've been listening to and I've really enjoyed, is a release called Connection by Imogen Whitehead. There it is, a really evocative picture that came on the front cover, and really evocative playing. Her flugel playing. She's the principal trumpet player of the Britten Sinfonia. And she does a lot of freelance work. You see her sometimes in the proms and all that, and playing. Wonderful, considered player. Not the bravura type of trumpet playing that you get. Quite contained, but very, very effective. Always very, very refined and elegant playing. But her flugel horn playing is something else. Really is. It's a real vocal quality. She can change it from purity to a husky voice, almost at a click of a finger.
The cover alone is quite evocative, isn't it? It's really.
It is, and some really interesting pieces. Right from the opening from Charlotte Harding, which just starts on one extended note of tension and then breaks free, all the way through to a beautiful little arrangement done by her father of Oh Wally Wally, which is, I think, northeastern in tune as well. And in between, there's some great little pieces. But it's the way in which it's considered. And the other part is it's done with a small string ensemble or with a piano. So the voice, the soloist voice is, center at all times. The focus is on the solo voice.
Fine orchestra as well, the Britten Sinfonia. Fine orchestra.
Yeah, and again, it's great to hear because a number of soloists are now taking the opportunity to become almost recital performances. Yeah, and it makes them much more enjoyable. But if you get the opportunity to grab this one, it really is fine playing. And any flugel players out there, if they want to listen to really elegant, refined, tuneful playing throughout the range, this is the CD for you. So really, I have to recommend that very, very highly. One that you were going to recommend highly is from Edward Gregson. Now, I think you've only just had the CD itself. It doesn't come out until next month. So tell us a little bit about this one. It's a celebration again of some of his works, but there's some great performances on it.
Yeah, it's actually out on the Chandos label in the middle of November. I'm lucky. I've had some pre-release downloads through from Chandos, so I've been able to spend quite a bit of time listening to this, and it is an absolute treat, and it really is. It's got the tuba concerto with Ross Knight as the soloist. What a player! Yeah. What a player!
Oh yeah.
And it was really interesting listening to his performance of that piece, because you and I probably remember John Fletcher playing it all those years ago. And I can remember it I was not but a lad back then, Ewan, but I can remember Fletch playing it. And Ross's sound is so reminiscent, I think, of John Fletcher. It's a wonderful performance, so really, really worth listening to, and a wonderful player in Ross. It's got the viola concerto, Three Goddesses. Now, this is a kind of companion piece to the horn concerto that
Yeah.
Eddie wrote for Tim de Messenere, which is Three Gods, which we heard performed for the first time at the Festival of Brass back in January, which is now, of course, released on CD. Really interesting to listen to that alongside the horn concerto and pick up on some of the thematic connections, etc. But really evocative playing. There is the oboe concerto, which is called Vision in a Dream, which again, wonderfully evocative, quite dramatic in places as well. Terrific use of percussion. Really, really interesting piece. But then in complete contrast, there are two lovely little miniatures. One called Song for Bram, which is just a really emotional, affectional tribute to Bram Tovey. Of course, Bram and Eddie were great, great friends for many, many years. And also a lovely little piece called Song for Sue, which is dedicated to Eddie's wife, which again is just a lovely little affectionate miniature, but so beautifully written, and with Eddie himself playing the piano part in both of those. So fabulous music, beautifully recorded, BBC Philharmonic with Ben Jernan conducting, out next month. Definitely one to have a listen to.
Eddie's going to give it a plug, I understand, as well, isn't it, on Friday?
He will be, because
he's on the radio.
He is. He's on In Tune on Friday on Radio 3 at about 5:15, I believe, with Petroc Trelawney, talking about hopefully the new CD, but also talking a little bit about his symphony, which of course is being played the next day at the Royal Albert Hall. So a good little brass band plug, hopefully, from Eddie on Radio 3 on Friday evening.
Talking of brass band plugs, is a great segue, this. And then talking about brass band plugs, Paul Hindmarsh. And
Perfect segue.
Wilfred Heaton. And I know we know Paul, this has been a labour of love of Paul's, but this is a slightly different one because this is away from his brass band works. This has been coming out, Discovering Wilfred Heaton. And Paul is also going to be joining Petroc Trelawney. I think Paul worked with him for about 15 years, he said.
He did,
on the BBC. So he's going on the In Tune with Petroc Trelawney on Monday.
On Monday, yeah.
So we've got, talking about earlier on, saying about making sure that we outward and people know about what's happening in the brass band world. There's two of our most eminent personalities within the brass banding world talking about brass bands, hopefully on both occasions on national radio. So we can complain in some areas, but these are two great advocates for banding. And again, with this, I know it's just come out as well, and I'm looking forward to actually listening to it myself. Paul has done a wonderful job with this, and again, it's great that he's going to be able to explain that to a wider audience.
Yeah, and it's fabulous that Paul will talk, as I know he will on Monday on In Tune, about Heaton's brass band music, but also it's the fact that Heaton will be unknown to Radio 3 listeners by and large, unless they happen to have listened to maybe contest music or one or two other Heaton brass band pieces. This is an ear-opening CD from the point of view that it is just completely different. I mean, anybody that knows Heaton's brass band music will know how gifted Heaton was. But this music really, there's a sadness about it from the point of view that you just think about what a composer Heaton could have been if his career had taken a different trajectory. The breadth of emotion on in this music is incredible. At the heart of it all, there's a piano sonata, which was never performed. It only came to light recently.
I think isn't there a link with the piano sonata with Partita? I think, isn't it?
There is, but it had never been played. He didn't quite finish it. He left a couple of the movements unfinished, which obviously Paul Hindmarsh has been involved in completing. But in that one piece, in that piano sonata, it's a grittily dissonant piece at times, but so much intensity of emotion. It's an incredible piece to listen to. But then in contrast to that, you've got various songs. Some of them almost sound like the Vaughan Williams of Lyndon Lee. I mean, it's quite interesting just to listen to the sheer range on the disc. But it's fascinating listening. It really is fascinating listening. Another result of Paul's labour of love with the music of Wilfred Heaton. But I think it's fabulous that he's able to bring this to a wider audience because it thoroughly deserves it.
Well, talking about one that thoroughly deserves to be brought out to the widest possible audience is the one which I think we're all looking forward to. David Childs, Still Glides the Stream. Just when you think that there's something that, he can't do anything more as a performer, he comes out again. He's like somebody who goes into a diamond field and everybody thinks all the diamonds are gone, and then he just finds yet another seam of the best diamonds in the world just below it. And he's done it again with this. In recital mode, he's alongside long-time associate Christopher Williams, wonderful pianist at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, where this CD was actually recorded. It's him in a more lyrical sense in many ways. There are some fireworks in it as well, but again, as a recital CD, it's just just the perfect example of a world class, and I mean this in the best possible way. He is a world class musician. And to hear the way in which he shapes the phrases, everything has got detail and clarity and understanding about it. Great pieces from Philip Wilby's, Still Glides the Stream, which gives the CD its title, all the way down pieces by Erlyn Wallen, Rodney Newton, Simon Parkin. There's his opening piece called Skunk, which is great fun on it as well. We are so lucky to have this, as I say, world-class performer as part of the brass banding movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what an advocate for brass bands and for the euphonium, but he's remarkable, Ewan. He just seems to get better. It's amazing. As you say, there's more of a lyrical accent to a large degree on this, but I mean the repertoire as well. I mean, as you say, the Philip Wilby piece, which is Still Glides the Stream, it's actually the sonata for euphonium and piano. That's a major new piece, nearly 15 minutes in length, world premiere recording on this disc. There's also the sonatina, the little compact sonatina for euphonium and piano by Rodney Newton, as you say. Interesting repertoire, really thoughtful, thought-provoking repertoire, performed, as you say, by a consummate musician. I think that's all you can say about David. And he just seems to go from strength to strength. But what a flag bearer, what an advocate for brass.
Absolutely. As I say, over the last couple of years, as I say, he's just gone into, you would think, it's familiar directions. He's done the virtuoso pieces, the lollipops, but they were Willy Wonka lollipops. They were absolutely brilliant. He's done the concertos, and now he's done this. But he's just taken everything to a new level of artistry. And any player should, make sure that they go out and buy it. I put mine on order, so it's going to be coming to me as well. So I'll be really looking forward to that one there. One that I have enjoyed and I'll be looking at, and I'll be doing a review hopefully next week, is one by Kyle Lawson called Introduction. Now, Kyle was a former principal cornet player of the Brighouse and Rastrick Band. He's a New Zealander. I think he's in the New Zealand Army Band, has been for some time. Wonderful talent. Really wonderful talent as a cornet player. He plays very much like David King. He's got his finger locked over on the bell, and he's got that sense of swagger about his playing as well. He's a very confident player, but he is able to meld and mold his playing just to get, sometimes he comes out and is very brash and bravura, but on the other side of it, he can really contrast
but a
that
supreme
with
lyricist
lyrical
as well.
Really impressive. And he's got pieces, as I say, on the one hand, he's got Bertram Moran's Southern Stars. Bertram Moran really does write firework pieces, and that really is a firework piece. But then he does a beautiful, Dark-Haired Marie, which is a great old piece, a real classic, which he plays. And he plays it with a freshness to it also. So that's just come out on it. I'm really looking forward to giving a bit more time to listen to it. It's got John Gollard's Ballade on there. And then, you got Piazzolla's Oblivion and Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto. Not played on the violin, played on the cornet. But that's the familiar little lollipop stuff. But he's showing the full gamut of his talents. He is a real talent. So if you can see that one around, please make sure that you get in contact with that. That may be his debut CD, but somebody who has done a number of CDs over the years is Brett Baker, and his latest is called the Heroic Trombone, and he's a heroic figure for doing all of these ones because he is testing himself to the limit. There are works from Gordon Jacob, Rob Whiffin, Stedman Allen, Christian Lindbergh, Brenton Broadstock. Blimey, he's doing the lot in it. So take your hat off to Brett. He continues to seek out and be the greatest advocate possibly for brass band trombone playing there has been. It's again another very fine release.
Yeah, well, he's been quite a prolific recorder of CDs over the years. He's produced some really, really good CDs, but there's been a little bit of a gap. But I think Brett's going through a really exciting time at the moment.
A renaissance.
At Corey. I mean, absolutely. A renaissance in the Welsh Valleys, Ewan. And, you know, he has seemingly found a really new lease of life. And I mean that in the most respectful way. I mean, he's playing wonderfully. Really interesting repertoire on this, accompanied by the Flowers Band, with whom Brett's got a connection going back many years. But again, really a really interesting mix of repertoire from traditional pieces like Gordon Jacob, Rob Whiffin, who we've talked about, who's in the box on Saturday. He was himself a trombonist. Piece by Christian Lindberg, Mandrake in the Corner.
Oh, I've heard that before. That's a heck of a piece.
It's a heck of a piece, as you say. Brenton Boardstock, Australian composer, I think.
Yeah, done quite a bit.
So a really good mix of repertoire. So again, I'm looking forward to spending a bit more time with this one and just listening to it in a little bit more detail.
I think you can actually get it at the Royal Albert Hall. I think it's on the World of Sound standard, World of Brass and World Play, etc. You can get it there. So I'm quite sure Brett will be down there. He'll sign a few copies for you as well.
I'm sure he will. So
congratulations there. One little one that I wanted to say is a bit of a crossover one, much like Imogen Whitehead, Matilda Lloyd. Now, Matilda Lloyd is somebody who a lot of people say there's a lot of presence about Matilda Lloyd. She's very, very clever at using social media, but she does back it up with some really fine releases. This one comes on the back of, she did one called Casta Diva, which came out in 2023. And this one is now it's called Fantasia, works for trumpet and organ. But she's taken established repertoire and also brought new repertoire into it as well. So she's got works by Pachelbel, Barker, Martini, and then linked with works by Krebs, Park, Bernard, and Panufnik. So, as you say, she's very, very clever in making sure that there's a promotion about what she actually does, but it is always backed up by the excellence of her playing. And again, critically acclaimed, some of these performances that she has given over the years. And this is another release where I'm quite sure will reach out to a widest possible audience. She is a very fine player.
Yeah. Natural successor to Alison Balsam, maybe, Ewan?
Possibly, yes, and again, somebody who should be brought back into the brass banding world if it's possible. She reminds me very much as like Anna Lapwood and Jess Gillum. These people, they really understand the medium in which they're working now. I mean that in how they present themselves, how they're the advocates of the music that they are playing, and then they back it up with the quality of their performances. So
they connect with people, and that's the key.
And it is, and no wonder she's very, very busy.
They don't just connect musically, which of course they do, but they connect on other levels as well. And so important these days, so important.
And two final ones then, just to round things off, and with a Welsh flavour, and not deliberately, I have to say, to do this. But the first one is Corey's Festivities, which is the third part of their Cornerstones Classics of the Brass Band Repertoire series. The first was Landscapes in 2019, followed by Variations in 2023. Philip Harper, he does choose those iconic works, and he does give them a fresh lick of paint, and in many ways more than a lick of paint as well. He does really get into the granular grit of them as well, and does something a little bit different. He really does bring them back to life, and he's done that again with this release. Life Divine is on there, Salute to Youth, Pageantry, Festival Music by Eric Ball, and Philip Wilby's Masquerade. So he's put his head on the chopping block, but by word, his band plays well for him, and it's a really, really fine release.
Well, I've only just dipped into this, Ewan, and I just cherry-picked a few little bits out of it this afternoon. The final movement from Salute to Youth, Gilbert Vinter, made me think back to the legendary Dyke recording. Do you remember, from the 1980s with Peter Parks conducting? And it's really got that vigour and tautness of ensemble about it. Really, really fine playing. Great to hear Masquerade again. I had a little bit of a dip into that. That's a piece that I've got quite a lot of affection for. I remember playing it at the British Open back in 1993, I think it was. No, earlier than that, maybe 1992.
Glyn Williams is Falstaff in it, I think it is, isn't he? He's the great solo.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
and he's a perfect Falstaff for it as well. It's a heck of a
It's a heck of a
euphonium
piece,
cadenza.
and
Yeah,
one of Philip
brilliant
Wilby's best pieces of a brass band, I think. So really intriguing mix of music, festival music, Eric Ball in there as well. Definitely one to enjoy, I think, and you know, from what I've heard so far, a Corey band on very fine form, Ewan.
it is. They are indeed. It's interesting because the first piece, Life Divine, they played it at the RNCM festival.
Yeah.
And Phil really, you know, he made sure that people knew about it. You know, the Life Divine and the foreword to it is, you know, it's a bit of nonsense, really. It's Edwardian music, romantic Edwardian music, which has got a little bit like, if we've ever read Robert Tressel's The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists as a book, it almost apes what, you know, how working men can better themselves through the arts and that part of it.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of a nonsense,
yeah.
but the music is great. And they play it with a real Edwardian sheen to the music.
Yeah,
It's almost like
yeah.
a quick vibrato. And they balance with that. They then play Eric Ball's festival music, and he takes a few risks with it. By my word, he really makes it come to life, and it shows Eric Ball as a really classic.
Breathes some new life into it, Ewan, doesn't it? It
Oh,
does
yeah.
genuinely breathe some new life into it.
Well, that's it. So that brings us to our last one before we end. We've just gone over a little bit longer than we usually do. And I have to say, it's just one that's come through today for me. And it's called Brass Odyssey. And it's the latest recording by Tredegar Band. It's of the music of Robin Stevens. Robin will be coming with the band to the Royal Albert Hall on the weekend. He is seriously ill. This is a project that he wanted to complete. Very much indeed. He's also done a number of recordings of his works with orchestras over the past year or so. But this is contemporary music, very, very difficult contemporary music indeed. A real challenge for the band, but one which they really bought into. The main work, Brass Odyssey, is over, you know, it's about 30 odd minutes long in duration. It's a really major, major work indeed. But there's some great pieces on there. It features some pieces for two French horns. There's a three-way conversation for unaccompanied euphonium, played by Sean Rhys-Jones. Les Niche is a featured soloist on a piece that called The Warrior Awakes, and he really had to be awake with regards to it. It's so difficult. And Debbie Griffiths plays a brilliant solo called Rondo alla Berserker, which you can't beat. If that tells you everything you need to know how to become a principal corner player. So that's just come out today, and that will also be available on the World of Brass stall at the Royal Albert Hall. So there we are, Chris. That's it for our preview and our review for this week. As we say, we've got lots to look forward to at the Royal Albert Hall on the weekend. Indeed. If you're around on the Friday night, there are concerts being undertaken by the Foden's Band at Regent's Hall and also by the International Staff Band with Ian Bousfield as the soloist. Gregson at 80 at the Royal College of Music, just across the road from the Royal Albert Hall itself. Then you've got a great full day of Symphony in Two movements by Edward Gregson to enjoy by those 19 bands, all trying as hard as they possibly can to be crowned the 2025 Champion Band of Great Britain. Join us in our live coverage there. Please subscribe to this channel and make sure that you like it, and join us again for our next recording, which will be done in just after the event takes place at the Royal Albert Hall. But that's it from us tonight. Chris, many thanks for joining us, and good night to everyone.
Bye for now.